The investigation is underway, and in Halifax this morning, we reached Mike Cunningham, who's the regional manager for air investigations with the Transportation Safety Board. Mr. Cunningham, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for being our guest. We're going to begin with the investigation. I know for your team of somewhere around 12, this is going to be their first full day of work on the site. Can you take us step by step through what they will do today?
Basically what we'll do is we'll start out with a briefing. We'll organize into teams. Different teams will look at different parts of the wreckage. Of course, safety is a concern. So there's components of the aircraft and stuff that will have to be safetied. I believe we do have a small quantity of goods on board that are medical supplies or something, so we need to deal with that stuff. But it'll be mainly documentation of the wreckage and the wreckage trail that leads in from the end of the runway. And then, of course, we'll begin working with representatives from Airbus that have arrived here in Halifax from France to begin discussions about how the aircraft can be dismantled and then eventually removed from the site.
So it's going to stay there on the runway for the foreseeable future, or for how long do you think it'll be there?
Well, certainly we want to keep safety in mind. We want to keep efficiency in mind, and at the same time, obviously, we want to try to get the runway back in service for the airport. So it's hard to say exactly, but I've seen these things be accomplished in 2 to 3 days. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that the weather stays good and everything lines up good for us.
Okay, so you're going to be studying, as you said, the equipment, the trail, everything that's physically on site right now. What about interviewing passengers and pilots, or has that already happened?
That's already begun, but that'll be an ongoing process. So that'll be going on, and as well, they'll be part of the team that's just dedicated to collecting information and documentation from folks like Nav Canada, from Transport Canada, because we'll begin compiling all the records for the aircraft itself, for the maintenance and the operation of it. And then, of course, we're all eagerly awaiting for some information to come back to us from the flight data recorder.
And the cockpit voice recorder, both of those recovered in Ottawa, so you don't have anything preliminarily back from them yet?
No, I would suspect because there's a data download process that's got to go through, and then there's the actual beginning of the analysis of that. So I would say that would be another day or possibly 2.
Okay. Interestingly, in your investigation this time, I understand you're going to have access to drone footage.
Yes, the drone technology has been coming along for a while for us, and the RCMP here in Nova Scotia have 5 drones that they use across the province. Of course, we work closely with them, and they've been nice enough to document the entire site for us with their drones.
Terrific. So that'll give you another perspective on things to better understand what happened. What is your latest thinking at this early juncture of what happened in the early hours of yesterday morning?
It's pretty hard to say anything at all at this point. However, obviously the weather has to be looked at carefully. Again, radar, flight data recorders will give us a good idea about how the approach was being flown, but we don't rule anything out. So we just keep turning everything over until we can try to get to the bottom of all the underlying factors.
So it could be weather, it could be something technical or something with the mechanization, the computerization, could be pilot error, could all of these things are on the table at this point?
Yeah.
And the weather, but we know so far from airport officials, snowfall warning in effect and winds around 55 kilometers an hour, 30 knots. Is that, according to your criteria, is that appropriate landing conditions as you understand them?
Well, there are legal landing limits. They're required to have a visibility minimum of half a mile, and I understand that they were well within their legal landing limits. Winds are kind of tough to predict. I mean, you can get sudden and unexpected wind gusts, but we'll be looking at all of that
in the days to come.
Yep.
You were pretty frank yesterday in that news conference when you talked about how fortunate these passengers and crew were to have avoided disaster. Thinking about it 24 hours later, can you give us a sense about how lucky they are?
Well, again, the position where the aircraft touched down so far back from the end of the runway, I mean, that terrain out there is not prepared as a landing surface. The actual antenna array that they had is kind of raised up from the ground a bit. So, I mean, things could have been worse.